How do you transition from employee to global entrepreneur earning a consistent income online? Welcome to Business Without Barriers, the show bringing you relevant strategies to thrive and succeed in a volatile world, and the show turning barriers into bridges by bringing humanity back to business. I'm your host, Carmen Wilde, and opening up his success vault today is Stephen Summers. Stephen is the CEO and co-founder of Marketplace Superheroes, an online education and services business that teaches their community of heroes to create a full-time income selling simple branded products globally on Amazon. And to do this for years, not just months or weeks. Over the last 5 years, Stephen and his partner, Robert Rickey, have grown their company from a single online course to the fully fledged 5-time 2 Comma Club award-winning business that is today serving close to 8,000 members. Along the way, they've built a global freight company as well as an entire software suite to make shipping and ordering products to sell on Amazon efficient and effective. Stephen and Robert also run their own 8-figure Amazon business, having sold $12 million worth of physical products globally. Welcome, Stephen. It's so awesome to have you on the show today.
Carmen, I'm so happy to be here. And what a really well-delivered introduction, I have to say. Sometimes I go on these shows and people are kind of, jumping around the place. You are so professional. So first of all, thank you for taking the time to do that. Excellent.
It's an absolute pleasure. It's the least I can do for such an incredible guest. So thank you for having
hopefully I'll live up to that. No pressure.
So we've started with a laugh, which is amazing, Stephen. I mean, you actually, when I let you in on Zoom, I love that. Hello, hi. Yes, such a fun welcome sound in your voice. So tell me, what is a fun, different, or quirky thing about you that most people would not know about?
Oh, that's interesting. Well, I was going to say that I'm a huge fan of Batman, but then people would think Marketplace Superheroes. He's got to be he's 100% into superheroes. That's maybe not that interesting. I actually don't know, but I would say maybe I took up golf about 2 years ago. I couldn't play golf to save my life. And 2 years later, I still can't play golf to save my life. But I love playing, but unfortunately at the moment, everything's closed down. So I'm practicing in my sleep at the moment. So there you go. I don't know if that's interesting.
Heavy and learning. So by the time you do get onto the golf course, you'll be doing
exactly.
Really well.
I'm practicing in my sleep, and again, it's been a really interesting journey that has been because we talk about mastery a lot in Marketplace Superheroes, and I'm sure this is something I see looking through your shows. You're speaking to a lot of different people shooting for mastery, and golf's any sport like that is great because it makes you very humble. You might think you're doing great in business or whatever you're doing. Then you go on the golf course, a beginner, and you can barely hit the ball. It's a really humbling experience, and it's all your fault. That's the even better news because you hit the club. So there you go.
I love it. Stephen, what do you totally love about your current business?
The biggest thing I love about my business, and it's funny, I was on another podcast recently and we were talking about this, and the host actually helped me really realize it almost was it's working with other people. It's actually seeing other people succeed. And funnily enough, I was on another podcast, which I'm not going to go on. And the guy was like, I don't want you to talk about your student successes. I want you to just talk about your own successes. And I always say, well, I can do that, but I'm going to be the most unrelatable person in the world if I do that. Like our whole journey of what we've done through to myself and Robert selling on our own to now working with all these people, investing in all these different Amazon selling companies that we invest in now. It's like, it's only interesting when you realize that more than one person has actually gone and done it and has been successful. And so for me, the ripple effect of that is huge. Like, what happens to those people? Like, what do they get to do in their lives that they couldn't do before? And it's going to take time now because they're building a business, but like, at least they're on the pathway. And it comes back to, I can talk about some of my story, but when I started out, I was in my early 20s. I'm 34 almost now, just to give some perspective. And when I began, I was totally clueless. I was like a Homer Simpson in business, I often say. And it's true. I didn't know what I was doing. And for Robert, you know, he initially guided me to get my start. So helping other people get their start is really rewarding. But also it's a great business because, you know, we have our freight company now. We're going to ship about 6 million items this year with our members from the Far East, China. Funny enough, I said the Far East one day to someone in the US and they didn't know where I was talking about. Because like, it's not the Far East to us. But anyway, Far East to us here in Ireland. And so, yeah, like just seeing other people succeed is huge. That's really my favorite thing, I think, right now.
I agree with you there. In my business coaching business, to my mind, my client's success is my success, and that's my greatest joy.
Yeah.
I don't think there is a greater joy than helping another human being succeed.
Yeah,
It,
I agree.
it's beautiful, and it's reciprocation that happens, which is beautiful. So I'm with you on that. You didn't always have success. So failure or disappointment is a natural part of any success journey.
Right.
How did your music career not working out actually serve you?
Yeah. So I was trying to be a musician for a lot of my teenage years. And we had a decent band. We were called $1 Million Shoes, which is a funny name for a band. But we were doing a lot of the right things, but a lot of the wrong things. So the right things we were doing was we made good music, so a good product. We got to know one of the guys in the band. He got to know a lot of really influential people. So network. Where we fell down though was really application of like doing gigs and stuff like that. As a band, like we weren't really. I say we. I'm not going to point out the individual people, so I'll say we were not prepared to do smaller gigs and start ugly, right? And so that was one of the biggest failures at that time. So all of that, then whenever the band finished, what actually happened was one of the members, he moved to the States. And so he said, you know, come with me. And at the time I was like, you know, 19 or 20. My parents were just like, no way, like, you know, too afraid for me to go anywhere and all of that. And so I was too afraid too. I didn't have the confidence he had or the belief he had. So I didn't do it. And he still lives in America to this day. And he's in real estate now, but he kind of does a bit of music stuff as well, to his credit. He's one of those guys, you know, he's made it work like in a different field. Point is anyway, that I learned a lot from that experience of, you know, having more than one person work towards a particular vision, getting and then picking the right people to do that with was big. So whenever that ended, then like a lot of people, I was pretty crushed, you know, and I was in my job as a data processor. So boring, the worst job ever. But, you know, that was a good thing because all of these negative things for a while led me down a bad path. You know, I was drinking every night. I was eating terrible food. I was getting fat and lazy. And then I started reading personal development books and started to realize, you know, if I want to do something, I've got to take full responsibility now. It's up to me. I would have blamed my failure in music on, say, other guys in the band or other situations. But in reality, it was all of our faults, but also it was my own fault. You know, I didn't go and really push that thing. So I learned also that music wasn't really my passion. I thought it was, but it really wasn't. And and where I really discovered this was shortly after this period of time, I started sending my own songs into a lot of these different critiquing services you have, right? And people would listen to the songs I wrote. And one guy came back and said, you're like an 8 out of 10 when it comes to commercial songwriting ability. He said, but in order for you to be really successful, you got to be like a 9.5. And he said, the problem is, in order to get from an 8 to a 9 or a 9.5, it could take you 15 years of your life to do that. And I was just like, I'm not prepared to work in these jobs and whatever for that long. And so at that same time, I had been reading some business books because I actually was doing a certification in business in a college. I did my diploma. I never finished my degree, but I started getting really interested in marketing and business at that point. And I just said, you know, looking back at my music career, a lot of my success came from hustling and putting together gigs and understanding how to promote those things. So I was being very entrepreneurial, but I almost forgot that in the failure, quote unquote, of the band. I forgot all these things. So it was up for me to rediscover through personal development, reading, learning that actually, if I want to create a difference in my life, it's up to me. And that's when I started going on this journey of finding Robert and all of that. So I think if anything, the music thing taught me, you know, it's a little bit cheesy, but if it's meant to be, it's up to me. And I remember hearing that and being like, wow, I've got to make some changes. So I started getting healthier and all that. And then I started, searching for opportunities now.
Great. Thank you for sharing that story with us. It's always interesting to see where it all started.
Yeah.
There's always a story.
Always a story, yes.
Yeah. So, Stephen, I think we can have a really nice discussion about 7 and 8 figures. If you look on, most people promise that, so you do this and we'll get you to 7 or 8 figures.
Right.
In fact, I think it's almost left. I work with so many businesses or business owners and founders, and it's almost like they start out out the gates. And the only number in their heads is, I need to earn 7 figures.
Yeah.
So let's get a little bit realistic. I'm totally all for knocking the ball out the park. However, realism at the outset is also good. How many
100%.
companies actually hit those numbers? How many companies actually produce over $1 million?
Well, I think it's great to be realistic because it's a great place to start from. And certainly on the internet, there's a lot of people with overhyped promises. I've seen a lot of that over the years myself. For a while, I was taken in by some of that stuff when I first started out, and then I met Robert and he really gave me the grounding in, you can absolutely get to doing over $1 million, pounds, euro, whatever currency you want per year. But obviously it has to be profitable as well. You can do that, but it's going to take some time. It's going to take some real things that need to be in place, products, investments, etc., which we can talk about. So that's a kind of a background. Then when you look at the numbers in the US, for example, they estimate about 3 to 4% of companies in the US are over $1 million in revenue. So that's a tiny percentage. And obviously within that, there's some huge companies. And then there's a lot of small companies, because a small company in America, different in different countries, but in America, a small business does less than 100 million in annual revenue. So reality is that most businesses are small businesses, number one. And number two, the reality is that only a very small percentage of companies actually get to over $1 million. Does that mean it's impossible? Absolutely not. Have done it countless times in my own life now. And I started very ugly. We can go through some of that. But I think the reality then, if you want to go in there, is a lot of people are not prepared to do what's required in order to hit $1 million in revenue or beyond. But like I said earlier on, it's got to be about profit too, because if you're doing $1 million in revenue and you're making a net profit before tax of 50 grand, you'd be better having a job. You'd be much better because you're not actually making very much money. And I think the other problem with online entrepreneurship or entrepreneurship in general is people say things like make $1 million. Well, what do you mean make $1 million? Do you mean profit, or do you mean revenue, sales, turnover? What are we talking about here? And you'll find a lot of people, and it's a real problem even in the Amazon space. I've seen people talk about Amazon millionaires, but it's really an Amazon company that's done over $1 million in revenue. But a millionaire is someone who has a net worth of $1 million, pounds, whatever, through their investments, assets they own, houses they own, and all that. So that's another conversation that I think is interesting. But I think what we can boil this down to is certainly a lot of programs promise big results, and we're all taken in by them. Let's face it. And the reason for that is because we want the result, but we don't want the process behind the result, number one. I think as well, like a lot of people, when I started, I thought if you're doing millions in revenue, whatever, you've got millions in the bank, quote unquote, which a lot of people talk about. Well, a lot of people don't realize, me too, having millions in the bank is the worst possible thing you could do for yourself. Why? Because banks have this thing called a deposit guarantee scheme, which basically means they'll only guarantee a certain amount of money you're holding in cash in your bank, which is 100,000 in most countries. And if you've got a joint account, it's 200,000 because it's 100,000 for each person. So obviously, if you've got your money in multiple banks, maybe you can store 400 to 600 grand or 800 grand, something like that. That's it though. But also holding that amount of cash is a terrible idea because banks nowadays, they give you basically nothing when it comes to interest on your deposits. Some countries like Japan, they charge you for holding money. They actually charge you money to put your money there, and they're going to loan it out to other people and make money on that, which is another thing. So what are we saying here? The education around entrepreneurship is really poor. And a lot of people that are peddling big promises are not good business people. The reality is a lot of them have only ever made money teaching other people how to make money. And I understand some people might say that I'm the same, but we're really not. You know, we had our Amazon business running for 4 years, myself and Robert. Robert's been doing this for 20 years, a lot longer than me. We started from scratch again. We restarted the company, brand new product lines, except for just a handful. And we re-engineered everything ourselves. We were doing about 1.9 million for our first year or two in revenue, at about a 30% net profit margin. And we did that for, and then we grew from there, obviously. But like we did that for a number of years before we ever talked to anybody about this stuff. And so there's that. But also then in our existing company, yes, we have a training coaching business, which absolutely is very profitable, which also, yes, absolutely, we generate the most revenue from that and our services businesses. Absolutely, we do. Like, yes, but within that, we've created a freight company. We've put in millions of dollars in investment to create our freight business. We've created an innovative service that's just not out there for online merchants selling on Amazon and stuff like that. We've created like a services company where we can do translations for our members, all these things that are needed in order to be successful. So I think when you tie it all together in my career, certainly I can only speak for myself. Like we know our numbers, we know what happens, we know the story. And I can tell you now in our community of almost 8,000 people, about 2,000 of those people have gone on, sold products. And again, I don't have the exact figure because it's tricky to track. But at an estimated level, we've got certain people tracked, certain people not tracked. I would say we've done well over, and I'm going to actually lowball it, well over $250 million, $300 million in revenue as a group. Now, I'd say it's more than that, but I'd be a little bit cautious about quoting a higher figure. Now, and that is an asterisk on that. I would have to go and check that exactly, but that's an estimated figure, which is certainly going to be more than that. I know that. Point anyway is that I've seen people start from complete scratch, including myself. I've seen people go from nothing to their first $1,000 a month to their first 10 grand. And then I've seen people go right up now. We've got a number of people that are touching $1 million in annual revenue at a 30% net profit margin. So if you're doing $1 million, you're making about 300 grand in net profit before your corporation tax. So again, like if you're in that, you could earn 100 grand, no problem, personally out of that. Whereas I was talking about $1 million earlier on with a 50 grand net profit, not good. So that there's some figures. Like I say, we've hundreds of people who we've documented their story, and many people, it takes some time to be successful. Like I think that's the problem too. Like you're mentioning there, how long to get to $1 million? And it's like, dude, before you've even hit $1 million, or do that, before you hit $1 million, you got to hit your first sale, and then you got to hit your first 5 sales. So then you got to get to a certain figure. If it's $100, $500, $1,000, everybody wants to start from zero and hit $1 million. And the interesting thing about that is this comes from a book called The Millionaire Fast Lane, which is a great book, a little bit of a crass title, but a brilliant book. And MJ DeMarco in that book talks about this idea where it's like, it's the wealth event. So someone's on Shark Tank or Dragon's Den over here, and they're pitching a product. You have an idea, and the idea is great. They get loads of money for the idea. Idea turns into this big thing and they're really successful. That's what a lot of society, myself included, believed entrepreneurship actually was. And it did feel very much like you could go from zero to $1 million very quickly. What people don't talk about is there are millions of companies who are much smaller and are successful in their own right, are earning a solid living for the business owner. It could even be a very nice living in a lifestyle-based type of business. Some coaching businesses are like that. They might do a couple of $100 grand a year, but the person's making $100 grand a year and they have a nice lifestyle and that's all wonderful. So like there's all that going on. So really, I think when we shrink all this back, we have to say any business, there's a process behind the business. And then I wouldn't say any business, but most businesses absolutely can hit their $1 million revenue level yearly and beyond. But why most people don't get there, actually, it comes down to, I think, individuals. Like I said to you, there was 2,000 out of 8,000 almost in our community who've gone on and done something. That means there's like almost 6,000 people who haven't done anything. And that's sad. Do people say, do you lose sleep over that? No, because it's not my responsibility. I would love, and we constantly are encouraging people to go and do it, showing success stories. But I think the reality is, that the most of the world out there just isn't prepared to put in the effort and time and all of that necessary to be a successful entrepreneur. And I think that's an interesting conversation too.
Yeah, thank you for that context. So if we were, so what I really love, Stephen, is you and Robert are authentic in terms of the fact that you have done this. You've been in the trenches. The business that you're teaching is what you've built from the ground up yourselves.
Yeah.
And what's also amazing is you've branched out, you're adding value. You've found ways to bolster your income by adding a lot of value. And that's the other thing, is it doesn't just happen through one sort of silver bullet. There's a lot of things, and the more value that you add, the more valuable your business becomes. And that's what you guys are doing. So let's go into, so 2,000 of 8,000 have really gone in there and done something with it. Let's talk to those people, because those are the people that are really wanting the insights and really want to know how to do this. Because at the end of the day, absolutely, if it's meant to be, it's up to me, like you said. So how important is mindset? So if you look at your business, we'll get to the other things now, fundamentals, but how important is mindset to begin off with?
It's everything. And again, mindset is the term that's been used for a long time. I have a different term. I don't think it's mine. There's two. One I heard somewhere, which was mind flow, because they're like, why would you want to have a mindset? Like, that doesn't make sense, right? And I thought it was really interesting, because like I said mindset for years, and I'm like, oh, true. Yeah, my mind's always growing, always expanding. There's one thing just to share with the listeners. The second thing that we say at Marketplace Superheroes, we say mentality. What's your mentality? Because your mentality is something, I think it's a learnable thing. It's also something that you do, I would say, inherit to a degree, but you can change. Whereas a mindset almost to me feels like it's unchangeable, even though there is a growth mindset and a fixed mindset, and Carol Dweck's work. I think it's better to think of mind flow, number one. So that's how I look at it. So with that in mind, having the correct mentality then is everything. Tony Robbins, who we all, I'm sure, have read something or heard him before, would have said that 80% of anything, 90% of anything is mentality, 10% is technical. And selling on Amazon or any business for that matter is the very same. So a few, I think, mind flow things you can look at as you go into this is, number one, you have to think long term. That's a critical component. Because if you don't think long term, well, and I'm reading another interesting book on this right now called Mastery. It's not the Robert Greene Mastery. It's an older book. He talks about the three different types of people. There's a dabbler, comes in, gets results, boom, falls off really quickly because they don't get that never-ending growth quickly. You learn a new language. It's really exciting. You learn a couple of words. Now we're getting into the irregular verbs, and I'm gone. I think, the next person then, I can't remember the name of the next person, but they're growing, they're expanding, they're sticking in for longer, but then they don't get this big result fast enough, so they start to fall off. And then you've got the hacker, the third type of person, who's the person that comes in and I don't care what I have to do. I don't care what corners I have to cut. I'm going to get the result. So those three kind of types of people, I was a dabbler for a long time in my life. So the change that I had the opportunity to make was to understand this, what they call the master's curve, which basically means that you're on an upward trend, and you get a really steep incline of progress for a tiny little period. Then lots of smoothed out upward progress, plateaued. It feels like a plateau, very smooth and upward, very long. Then a little one up again, and then on and on and on it goes. And that's something a lot of people don't want to accept. But it's something I had to learn to accept when I first met Robert. I said to Robert, I'm going to be making 10 grand a month personally in the next couple of months. And he's like, how the hell are you going to do that? I'm like, I'm going to sell stuff online. He's like, well, what products have you got? I was like, I don't have any. He's like, well, okay. What investment are you going to put in? I was like, I don't know. So I started very much like a lot of other people. And that's the thing you have to understand. If you don't have a long-term outlook, you're going to fail in anything you do. It doesn't matter, because the reality is that we live in a plateau most of the time. And you have to learn to love the plateau and learn to, when you're in the plateau, what do I have the opportunity to do right now? So that brings me on to my second thing, which is changing how you describe things to yourself. Language is incredibly important. And obviously, some people, if English isn't their first language, they might describe things to themselves in their native language this way. But we all have these words, right? And another mentor of mine taught me about these weasel words, right? Called weasel words because we weasel out of things when we say them, like, I could, I should, maybe, possibly, that kind of thing. And he said, the reality is that in order to be successful long term, you have to start thinking in the language of opportunity, in the language of certainty. So what will happen, what's going to happen, rather than what might happen. And some people might say, yeah, but you can't be sure it's going to happen. And I'd say, no, but at least you can be positive about it the whole way through. Whereas if you're unsure, like when we start to live in an uncertainty and stay in uncertainty, and also overconfidence is dangerous, by the way, because if you just believe you can be successful no matter what, it doesn't matter what you do, that's not good. So a healthy amount of balance here is important. But I think for most of us, myself included, I used to say all the time, oh, I need this, I need that. And it's like, if we're always using these needy words in our language, we're going to be needy. Whereas what about, I have an opportunity to find products to sell on Amazon. I have an opportunity to reach millions of people on that platform. I'm excited about that, rather than, what's the least amount of money I can start with? How can I avoid risk at every turn? And so and those kinds of people that are looking for the no risk, no money down, all of that, they're the exact people that end up in these other opportunities we talked about, hitting $1 million really quickly because it's sexy, it's exciting. I'm going to go and hit it. And then, of course, it doesn't work out because they're a dabbler. They get a little bit of progress, gone on the first sign of difficulty. So understanding that is critical. I would say on from that, then, most of us are spending way too much time consuming things rather than producing things. And that's a huge problem. Certainly I see it. Our community have gotten a lot better now because we've really, we've all these different live shows we do for our members and stuff. And we're constantly talking about these different ideas. And that was a big idea that I learned. Again, that actually comes from the Millionaire Fastlane book I mentioned earlier, which is a great book. And I realized, how much of my day am I consuming things? And whenever I was in my previous life working as a data processor, band finished, trying to make it, I spent most of my day walking to work, headphones in, listening to positive material. Now, that sounds great and like a good thing, but actually it's not, because if you're just listening to positive, uplifting information all the time, you're not actually listening to anything instructive. It's going to teach you skills. You're not actually out there implementing the skills you've learned. You're never going to change your situation. So you have to understand that if you can switch it to 20% of my time I'm consuming, 80% of my time I'm producing, now your life's going to change. Because even today, right, I'm speaking to you, which I'm so happy to be, Carmen. And I've got two other podcasts interviews I'm doing today. That's so exciting to me, because now it's like I am producing. I get to share my message and hopefully inspire other people all day. And so years ago, when I started Marketplace Superheroes and we had no following, we had nothing, that's how I got my start as well. I was like, what can we do? So it's like producing, adding value to other people, like you mentioned earlier on so well. These are things we have to do. And adding value is a great thing to learn as well. Like, even if you're in a position where you're not making the money you want to make right now, if all you did was learn a skill that helped a company get a specific result and it added value. And by the way, most companies are terrible when it comes to marketing. They haven't got a clue, which I'm looking to fix now as we go forward. But you could easily go in and make money while having your job when you learn a high value skill. But a lot of people, they don't want to do that. They want to keep on searching for the golden ticket. And I can tell you something, I've been around the block a while now, some people longer than me. Maybe I'm not good at business, but I'm yet to find like an unbelievable shortcut where I'm going to hit 100 grand or something in my first 30 days. I can't find it. There's work involved, there's process and everything. And that's just how it is.
Great the way you've put that together. Thank you. I love the mind flow. And, just listening to what you've said, the word that kept popping to mind was solution. think solution, talk solution, create solutions.
Absolutely. I love that.
Yeah, don't be the problem. Don't talk the problem. Don't, be in it.
Exactly.
Be the solution. Lovely. And that if your mind's flowing.
That out. I love you picked that out, actually, because I didn't find myself saying that much, but yeah, like you're right. And I say this in our company now, I say to all of our different team members, there are no such thing as problems. There's just opportunities. Yeah. So if you actually treated your life that there's no problem anymore, there's just opportunities, how would your life change? Like, it would change very quickly. And so some people would say that's a naive way to live your life. But again, I don't listen to those people because where do they go? Like, that's the thing too, like, negativity and over pessimism and all of that. Like, some people say healthy pessimism is good, kind of like what we said earlier on. That can be true. Yeah. But like, the problem is we live in a world where we have extreme pessimism, extreme cynicism about everything. And I had it as a kid too. I'm not going to blame my parents. It's just how they were brought up, and they passed that on to me, which I've changed with time, and they've changed too. But it was that thing of, I don't know if you had the same experience growing up, but if your parents are like this, but everybody that was selling something was out to get you, or trying to get you, and they want to rip you off some way or not. Whereas nowadays, I realize that's not true. Why do people sell things? Because they sell something, typically, sometimes not the case. Typically it solves a problem of some kind. It's a solution of some kind. And the better the solution, the more money you can charge for it. And that comes back to what I said earlier on. Like, I thought I had to create the next Facebook, Twitter, whatever. That's a lot of nonsense. Like, you just have to go out, like you said, add value, solve a problem. And these are business 101. Most people ignore that advice because they say it's too simple. I've heard it a ton of times. But if you've heard it so many times, then it works. So, are you doing it rather than just saying it doesn't work and being cynical?
Yeah. It's also common sense, when we talk about these simple things that are common sense, but then common sense is not common knowledge, which is really interesting. and I have this all the time because I help clients deal with really, really, really complex problems.
Yeah.
And complex behavioral problems, complex thinking. And the solutions are generally quite simple. It's like standing right in front of them, and they generally know the solution too. And when you put it in front of them, it's like, no, it's got to be more complicated than that. There is no way it can be that simple. So we're our own worst enemies.
Yeah, I do want to know something too. Something I tell a lot of aspiring entrepreneurs on that point is the worst mistake you can make, in my opinion, when you start out as an entrepreneur, even when you're a successful entrepreneur, is you just try to figure something out completely from scratch all the time. Whereas there's a lot of people who have figured out solutions to things and they sell those solutions. And what I find, people have this thing of like, if I didn't figure it out, then it's not that valuable because there's an ego attached to that. Whereas actually, no, put your ego away and understand that there's a lot of people who have figured things out before you. There's very little original in the world left, but there's an ability to connect different things together to create something that feels new. And I think it's like understanding that you're like, well, any problem, quote unquote, that I have being an opportunity, what's the opportunity? Who solved this problem? Who can I speak to? Like I am constantly investing in education. And again, I am producing more than I'm consuming. For anybody that was trying to pick me out on that one, I am. But I'm constantly learning and improving my skill set, making myself more valuable. Because I remember another brilliant thing you guys can watch. Anyone can watch on YouTube. It's totally free. It's a Jim Rohn talk. I think it's called "You're Living Your Best Year Yet" or something like that. It's 4 hours long, right? I've listened to it countless times. And this video is transformational. And he talks about a lot of these principles, talks about not reading don't just read the positive stuff, And the big thing was, he said in that was like, you have to make yourself more valuable to the marketplace. And I didn't understand what that meant. I was like, well, what does that mean though? And what it actually means is you become so skilled and knowledgeable, you can connect things A to Z together instantly. And you can also see where people are going wrong quickly because you understand the entire process. So I spoke to a company the other night. I don't usually do consulting, but I really like this guy. And I had a chat with him, and he has a cool software, totally clueless about marketing. I said to him, you've got to learn how to market your business. Here's where you need to start. But not everybody is investing their time in skills that are high value. They're spending a lot of their time in making the product, the product better, making the button orange rather than blue or whatever. And that is important, but limited,
Yeah.
Leverage.
Let's talk now fundamentals around building a successful Amazon business.
Yeah.
What would be those critical things that you have to get right?
No problem. The first one, and this is for any business, by the way, business people don't do it. You must fulfill demand, don't create demand, right? We said this now for like 10, 11 years nearly. And it's such an important point. People miss it. Because what does fulfill demand mean? Well, when you go onto the Amazon platform, you can see products that are already sold. You can see the bestseller rank. It's number 3,242 in kitchen and dining. So that has sold. And it's sold at different levels depending on where it is on this BSR spectrum, as we would call it. Because there's millions of items on the Amazon platform. So understanding that, then you're like, okay, that's got demand because it's sold. Right. What does that market now look like for that product? So we search that keyword on Amazon, and we can start to see what the options are for the customer. We call it emulating the customer. So let's say they're going to type in plastic shoebox. So they type that in. What do they see? How many different options are there out there? How simple or really hard would it be for me to create a new offer and actually get into that market? So really the first piece of advice is fulfill demand, don't create demand. That's an important point. So don't invent something and try to sell it. Secondly, then we have to understand, calculating market size, understand validating a product opportunity on Amazon. And all we're really saying is, how many search results come back if I search plastic shoe boxes? If it's less than 1,000, that's a good thing, but it's not everything. So less than 1,000, ideal. That's what we're looking for. If you typed in something like wooden mannequin for drawing, right? That's going to be like 140 or something come back, right? So that's like the difference. Then you go to the second phase, which is, okay, well, the wooden mannequins that are for sale, what bestseller rank are they at? So we look at that so we can assess how big is the market. So we look for products less than 50,000. I know I'm giving you some specifics, but it's just so people can kind of understand roughly what we're thinking. Less than 50,000 is what we're looking for. So if all the wooden mannequins are like 40,000 plus, that tells us it's a small market because that's the upper end of the market. If all the mannequins are like 100 in art and crafts, they're selling like crazy. It's going to be super competitive. It's just going to be hard to succeed in. So there's no exact answer, but we get a feel for a market when we start looking at this. How many options are out there? What options are out there? Is there a particular size? Are they all extra large? There's nothing that's large. So we have all these rules for anybody listening to understand and validate a product. That's another big mistake people make. They kind of go, oh, I'll just sell anything because it's got a bestseller rank. I'll just sell it. But terrible idea. We have to understand the competitive landscape of a product. On from that, then we have a lot of things we call item specifics to avoid. So like if something's hazardous, you have to avoid that because Amazon won't ship it out for you. But Amazon might sell it, but you can't sell it on Amazon using Amazon's platform fulfillment capability, which I'll talk about in a second. I just realized people might know that. In other words, we can actually use Amazon's warehouses, and we do, to ship our products out. So let's say sold by Stephen, fulfilled or shipped by Amazon. So Amazon literally ship it out on our behalf. We don't have to do any day-to-day work. Amazon take care of that for us. They do all the customer support as well. So what our role is then is to understand what I've talked about already and find products that are low competition but have got demand. We can improve the offer, make a better offer on Amazon, and we get it selling in multiple Amazon countries at the same time using Amazon's fulfillment capability. So we're not there shipping stuff out all day long every day. Where our freight company comes in then, another lesson is you need to have great logistics. And if you don't, it's very difficult to succeed. And the reason for that is that we can only send a small quantity into Amazon's different warehouses now. And the reason for that is because we predicted this many years ago. Amazon are not a warehouse. They're a fulfillment center. So they don't want you to send in 2,000 units of something that's unproven. They want you to send in 100 or 50 and then send us in more when it starts working. So a lot of people don't have a freight partner who can do that. They might have to ship it to their own house or something. So that's why we created Superhero Freight over the last couple of years, because we can store it in our warehouse, and we do loads in that company. Like, we speak to suppliers on behalf of clients. We do all that boring work for them, so it's just super easy. And then all we do then is we store it in our warehouse, and then whenever the person sees, wow, I need more inventory, they do a replenishment order from us, and it's very simple. It's getting a little complex, but just so everyone understands, that's an important thing. And on from that, then I would say you can't just sell one product. I see a lot of people, and it's such a funny mentality, which is, I'll get the first product successful, then I'll bring in the next one. And it's like, it doesn't really work that way though, because the first product doesn't affect the second product in any way. It just doesn't, because they're going to be totally different products. They have no relationship whatsoever. So you're basically saying, like, on your first attempt, which is probably not going to be that great because you're learning and whatever, you're going to base your entire future on that one thing working. And only if it works will you move to the second product. So we always tell people, look, launch with, I would say, 2 to 3 products minimum. And so a product's going to cost you anywhere from $800 to a maximum of $3,000 to launch. So that's just to give people a figure on that. Depends on the cost price of the product and how many you have to order and stuff like that. It's hard to say. So understanding that, then having multiple products in your business, now I would also tell people, get them selling in multiple countries. Don't just sell them on Amazon.com in the US, for example. If you can, and with our help at Superhero Freight, we actually enable people to split their shipment in China and send some to the US, some to Europe, some to Australia, some to Canada. We can do that because we have warehouses in all those countries. So that then really reduces your risk down a lot more, because you're trialing out the same product in more than one market. You're getting it in front of millions of more customers. So when you put all that together, then you kind of get fulfill demand, don't create demand, understand the what validates a product. Then you get on to understand the competitive analysis of a product. So like, you know, it's a good opportunity. Then you're getting on to having multiple products. You're getting on to have it in multiple markets. When you put all that together, you can see how you're reducing your risk at every step, and you're looking to maximize your launch at every step as well.
I can see how much value you're offering through not only the way you're teaching it. The flipping mistakes to avoid is huge.
Huge.
So, sometimes it's more important to know what not to do than even the steps on what to do. And the value you guys have offered through all these various stages is immense. So if you could have a billboard that said, "Do not do," what would you put on that billboard?
Well, what I would put on there, they would not understand. I'd have to explain. But what I would say is, I'd probably say, do not sell plastic water bottles. It's probably what I would say there. But what I actually tell them is, don't get involved in what I would call confusing markets. Now, people are probably wondering, what the hell does that mean? I'll tell you. So a lot of people in the Amazon educational space, what they will do is they'll tell you, like, you know, get involved in these hot categories. So like the earring backers, the things you put on the back of an earring, like, right? Amazingly, they sell tons on Amazon. But the problem is that there's so many different types of earring backers, colors, designs, hypoallergenic, not hypoallergenic. It's massive. And what they're all relying on is that this hypoallergenic keyword, along with the rest of it, is enough that I'm going to be found, I'm going to make sales. So what they're doing is they're trying to take a small slice of a huge market. And that used to work on Amazon years ago. But in those competitive categories, there's just too much out there now. So what we do is we go after the boring, non-sexy, sell a small number of units a day in a number of countries. And we want to have loads of those products in our business. Because when we do that, we're de-risking as well, because we've that's like a stock portfolio with lots of different products, lots of different countries. That's really, really good. But also it's a lot easier to compete because the listing quality, as in like how good it looks on Amazon, is usually terrible in these types of products, you know. I mean, I'm talking as boring as the little things that cover the feet of a washing machine to stop from scratching the floor. Like that's how boring I'm talking. It's so boring. But there's solutions to problems and people buy them all the time. So like most other people in this space are like, go after these really competitive products. And yeah, you could make thousands of sales a day of those products. But the amount of money it's going to cost you to get in there, man, of stress, hardship, especially if you're a beginner, it's not worth it. So we've really simplified things back a lot, I would say. And where people get a little bit worried in our model is that they're not fully confident that, like, you know, this tomato, you know, like a tomato or tomato, you might say if you're in the States, like a tomato steak, like thing that you use to grow tomatoes. Like you shouldn't sell those, but just as an example, like that's scary to sell versus, I don't know, like a bento box or something, because the bento box, they've heard of it before. It's more established. They believe they sell more. And that's the wrong way. It's like, no. Let the data, let the numbers tell you what's going on. And then just go in with a small order, try it out, see how it goes. And what almost always happens, Carmen, I see it so many times when I do case studies, we do them on our YouTube channel, which I recommend people check out. Almost always happens that they got their first product wrong. A lot of people, because of this very reason. Oh, I knew I should have done that, but I went for the more competitive item. And the minute it came in and I had other stuff in that was less competitive, I was kicking myself. I was like, why did I do that product? Because it was down to this weird thing. I don't know, psychologically, we have it as humans where if I know of that, therefore it's going to do better, which is completely, it's the inverse of the reality, you know? How funny.
So don't go bling, go boring.
I love that. I've never said that before. That's brilliant. Don't go bling, go boring. I'm going to rob that on you. I love that. Great.
So what you said is, wow, I love what you've explained to us, because it shows how easy it's going to be to go wrong in this business if you don't have people like you guys helping with the fundamentals.
I would agree.
Because our egos are going to get in the way, where you're going to want to go, I can create demand for this sexy thing, surely.
Exactly.
So it's really fascinating what you shared with us. Thank you.
No problem. I'm glad you picked all that up from what I said. I've clearly said one or two things that make sense, which is excellent.
It's all excellent. Let's talk relationships in this online space.
Yeah.
So how important, I mean, this show is about overcoming barriers, and it's very much about bringing humanity back into business.
Yeah.
And you'd think that in an online space, we've become potentially less personal. We're not seeing each other face to face. And this is, again, one of those things where it's the inverse, where actually you've got to almost become more personal to make up for the lack of face-to-face interaction. How are you managing to bridge the gaps online? Are there things you do?
Yeah. Well, we run a lot of different businesses now, right? So I can give a few different things we do. I would say on the Amazon side, certainly when you're selling on Amazon, it is somewhat impersonal. It is. You're utilizing the platform, you're fulfilling demand. There's not much of an opportunity for us to bring that humanity in there. I would say, just being totally transparent on that. However, there is a however. If you're learning, for example, like getting into a community of people who are on the same journey as you is vital. And I mean, like, even if it's whatever, some kind of a free community or something, people are really important. But also remember, like, we are selling to people even on Amazon. It's not like a computer is buying my tomato steak and is growing tomatoes in their back garden. You know, that doesn't happen. It is people. But I suppose where the humanity comes, if you're learning on that side, it's in building a network of people who are on the same journey as you. But also, and again, people will say I'm plugging coaching or whatever, but realistically, having a coach, having a person you can speak to, you can sit down with one-to-one. Our most successful students, they upgrade to a bit of coaching always. And it's just down to the fact that you have someone to guide you hand in hand through a process. Like videos are great, content is great, but it's only so good because there's no feedback mechanism. I would say on from that then, as a company that are an educational company, our biggest innovation, I would say, beyond any, has been shows, online shows. So we have loads of shows that happen all week in our different groups. I'll give some examples. So what's it? Today we have what we call our Alidation show at 4:00 UK in one of our Facebook groups. What that is, it's a product research show. Two of our members of our team, they go on, they take in products that some of our members have like said, hey, what's the market for this look like? Should I sell this? And they literally just share the screen and go through it and talk about whether you should or shouldn't sell it, what's good about it, what's not good about it. There's two people on camera talking all the time, people in the comments chatting all the time. So we do another show then on Tuesday called the Freight Hour, which is in our freight group, so our freight clients. And we do a similar type of research show, but also we answer their questions. And we do other things like that are super boring but important, like, help people figure out what their commodity codes should be and whatnot. But it's important stuff. Then on Wednesdays, we do Win Your Wednesday. Myself and Robert, we're driving our community on. It's all live on Facebook. We're pushing people. These are all in our groups, by the way, as well. We don't do it on our page or anything because you get very little reach with that. So then, I don't know, on Wednesday there's 2 shows, Thursday there's 2 shows or 3 shows, I can't even remember anymore. Friday there's shows. So we have shows all the time, and this has helped us create a great relationship with our members. As well as that, we have our podcast and things like that, like you have a podcast, but our podcast is a lot of times it's Robert and I chatting about different ideas. So like this week, we're going to talk about that mastery thing I talked about earlier on in this show. There's another example about a tennis player in that and helping people understand things take time, etc. So we do all of that. So it's a lot of content. And that is where you'll succeed in business in the future, is by personalizing. I agree with that. And by actually understanding you're working with humans, you're serving humans, and you're selling things to humans that solve problems for them. And when you get that, like, in even the coaching world, like, the 7-8 figure thing is there on this side. The coaching side, it's going to be a higher ticket you go, the more clients you have, like all the Facebook ads you're driving, blah, blah, blah. Like that's the same thing on that side. When really and truly, if you have a small group of great clients that you're continually adding value to, they'll keep paying you. They'll keep buying because they're getting more value than they're paying you for. So it's like an arbitrage conversation. Like, I'm paying you 10 grand, but I'm making profit of 100 grand. That's a great return on investment for me. Why wouldn't I continue to do that? And so yeah, I agree with you. And there's some of the things we do.
Love the shows. I think that's really nice. And
engagement.
The engagement that it
on shows. Give me a 1 if you believe this, or hey, what do you think it is, A, B, or C? And like we do shows now, like on our Wednesday show, we'll have 2,000 comments. Like, and we'll have about 200 people on there. But it's great, and Facebook love it because you're giving them what they want, which is you're keeping people on a platform, so they will serve you back. They'll serve that content to more people in your community, the more value you add. And again, you talked about earlier on, adding value.
And it's so interactive, it's so real, it's in the moment, it's engaging. So I can really see how the actual idea of shows is actually working.
Yeah. And we're not going anywhere, certainty, right? It's like, a lot of companies that are online to sell you a course, and you may never hear from them again, or you might hear from them trying to sell you something else, Now, I have no problem with selling things. I sell things all the time, but you have to, I talk about this in a separate conversation for online business owners, coaches, etc. And I talk about it as you need content and connection.
Yes.
And when you have those two things, you're on a great path. Whereas if you only have content, but no one gives a crap, then it's not going to work. If you only connect, but you're not saying anything, no one's going to care. So they need to have those things in place to create that value we talked about. And then, if you're doing that, I would say 80% of the time, and the other 20%, you're offering different products and services. There's no problem. People are more than happy for you to sell things because they know you're solving the problem, but you're there and you're a real person creating a real connection. And people in our community, like, I've never met you guys, but I feel like I know you. Because they do. They have a relationship with us now,
Nice combo, that content and connection. Really nice.
Yep.
What's the next big thing for you? You've done so many amazing things. So what's next?
It's again, it's a really good question. Like, we bought a legal firm last year. And so we offer like trademarking and stuff like that to our members at the moment. So we're looking to grow an online legal firm in time who can basically take care of online-based businesses is one thing we're looking to do. So we've done very well with our existing audience, but we want to branch out, because one of the things I know now, having built all these very big businesses online, a lot of companies are not protecting their IP very, very well. They're not trademarking themselves. They're not putting in contracts with clients. They're not taking care of the basics of business. As we start to move more and more online now, that's a bigger thing, especially in your type of industry as well, in coaching, like which we're in too. If you don't have client agreements, you're in trouble, because someone might decide to charge back on their card or something. And if you don't have an agreement, like, you're not, that's gone, even though you might have put months of work in with somebody. So there's that. We're building an online kind of accountancy service as well. We've been doing that for a while now, Superhero Office. But I'd love to have a bigger place where we can help online companies be more tax efficient online, understand what they can do. Because again, online's a little bit like the Wild West, even though it's not quite the Wild West anymore. So we're doing all of that. And then we've loads of other stuff. Like, we're building all these other platforms and everything. And it's not about the money anymore. A lot of people, I used to say I was a load of crap when people said that. But if it was about the money, I'd have stopped long ago, because, I could easily be making, no problem, 200 grand a year with very little effort now. That's not me being, oh, look at me, aren't I wonderful? We've built it up over the years like that. We could do that. But, that doesn't interest me, because number one, you take all that money personally, you're paying half of it in tax. So it makes no sense. There are other things you can do, but you're going to pay a lot of money on that. I'd much rather put it back into the business, grow new things, do new things. And so what we find ourselves doing now is picking out cool people and quit your job. Here's money. Let's start a business. We do a lot of that now. And that's much more exciting, because now we're doing things that's where I get my interest from.
Yeah. Solutions, Stephen, solutions. That's what you're about.
Hey, Carmen, you said it. You got me down to a T. I love it.
So if you could share a message with the world that is really deeply meaningful, say you had a platform to talk to the whole world, and based on what your experiences are of really living maybe a fulfilling life, what would be the message you would love to share with the world?
Well, it's not my quote, but it's what I live by, and it's a well-known quote, and it basically just is, to get what you want, you have to help enough other people get what they want. Zig Ziglar quote. And I would say that's the message I would put out there. Some of my favorite books, The Go-Giver, Bob Burg. I don't know. Have you read that book before, Carmen?
The Go-Giver? I've seen the title and I've meant to get it. I haven't read it.
Buy it. Buy that book, especially you being a coach. You'll really appreciate it. But the premise of the book is that giving is what it's all about. And that does sound a little bit like a Miss America moment, right? Or a Miss Ireland moment. But, that is the game that we're in. And the more you give time, resources, the more you're going to get back. And you don't do it just to get back, but you do it because you want to give, number one. But you understand that that's just how the world works. You said it earlier on. It's reciprocal, you said, but you've got reciprocal altruism is how the world works like. So when you understand that, you realize, well, it's all give and take all the time. So if I don't give, I'm stopping the flow. And if I stop the flow, then I'm breaking it up and it's not going to continue. So if I can keep on giving and doing things and keep that flow moving, I will get what I want eventually. But what I want really is, I love seeing other people taking something we've done and do something, because I know what it's like to be in a job, to feel lost, and someone comes along and actually does show you the way. It's like that show, The Mandalorian. This is the way, right? And it's there's so that's it for me. Helping enough people just waking them up to there's more options. Like there's other things you can do, and here's how business actually works. That's what I would say.
Thank you, Stephen, and thank you for crystallizing so amazingly what it takes to earn that first 100K and then build it up to the 1 million if that is what you want to. There's a process, there's fundamentals, and you've really given us I love the way you just crystallized each point. Thank you so much for doing that and spending the time here with me and for us to then be able to share this with others.
Great. Humanity is a great thing, right? And I think it's a brilliant thing that you're doing. You're looking to bring that back more, but that is coming back, by the way, because we're craving that now in the world we live in. And so I think you're doing a really important thing. So keep it going. And thanks a million for having me on. I really appreciate it.
And thank you. You keep going too. You're doing an amazing thing. There's so many people out there that are needing to fill spaces. They've been laid off. They've been retrenched. There's so many gaps to fill. And what you're doing is bringing a real opportunity to people. So thank you for that.
Thank you. I'll do my best.
We know you will. And to all of those of you watching, listening, thank you for being with us today. I know that you would have got so much value from this. And to me, the key flowing right through it was exactly that, mind flow, and to create flow in your life, whether it is abundant flow of income, fulfillment, whatever it is, it's all about the solutions. So think solutions, speak solutions, create solutions, and be a go-giver, because that comes back to you in ways that you cannot even put a price to. So thank you for being with us. Go well. And until next time, lots of love.